the Honorable Justices of Appeal and Honorable Judges of the High Court sitting in the special full court sitting for the admission of Counselor to the inner bar.
May it please your honors. Honorable Madam Justice Yonet Cummings Edwards, Chancellor of the Judiciary. Honorable Madam Justice Roxanne George, Senior Counsel, Chief Justice. Honorable Dawn Gregory, Justice of Appeal. Honorable Brassington Reynolds, Judge of the High Court. Honorable Nareshwar Harnanan, Judge of the High Court. All the distinguished judges of the High Court presiding remotely in this full court. Honorable Attorney General, Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall, President of the Guyana Bar Association, distinguished Senior Counsel, distinguished candidates for admission to the inner bar, Deputy Registrar, relatives, friends, special invitees, good morning. This is a special sitting of the full court of the Supreme Court of Judicature to admit to the inner bar the following distinguished attorneys at law. Mr. Stanley Moore, Senior Counsel, Ms. Jamela Ali, Senior Counsel, Mr. Timothy Jonas, Senior Counsel, Mr. Roysdale Forde, Senior Counsel, and Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Senior Counsel. It is my distinct honor to indicate to you that the order in which presentations will be made in these proceedings is as follows. Mr. Harry Narayan Ramkaran, Senior Counsel, will present the Honorable Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Attorney General. Mr. Nandlall will thereafter present the other newly appointed Senior Counsel to this august body. We will then have the ceremonial changing of the robes. Mr. Robin Stobie, Senior Counsel, will then welcome the newly appointed Senior Counsel to the inner bar. He will be followed by the President of the Bar Association, Mr. Taney Husti. The Honorable Chief Justice, Madam Justice Roxanne George, will then make her remarks, and the Honorable Madam Justice Yonet Cummings Edwards, Chancellor of the Judiciary, will bring the curtains down on these proceedings with her remarks. At this juncture, I now invite Mr. Ramkaran, Senior Counsel, to make his presentation. Thank you.
May it please your honor. Upon ruling in favor of the application contained in the petition before your honors, if your honors are minded so to do, your petitioner, the Honorable Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, would have completed the process of being admitted as a senior counsel after having been appointed by His Excellency the President on the 30th of October, 2020. The appointment follows a specific process to which I will refer in a moment. But this exercise can no longer be regarded as merely formal. In a recent decision, His Honor Justice Harnanan ruled that this honorable court is not obliged to entertain a petition such as this. I presume that your honors need to be convinced that your petitioner is qualified to be admitted as a senior counsel. I seek, therefore, to prevail upon your honors that in the case of the Attorney General, there is no known reason why his petition should not be accepted. This ceremony taking place just as the season of admitting newly qualified lawyers has ended represents the next level of celebratory aspirations for the newly admitted and all lawyers who strive for excellence. By commitment and application, by the consistent production over a long period of work of the highest quality, the Attorney General has achieved a status worthy of high recognition. While we are aware that a process of consultation is undertaken, we do not yet officially know of the details, but at the conclusion of that process, His Excellency the President will then confer the honor and dignity of senior counsel on those who he considers to be worthy of the honor, as His Excellency has done in this case. Among those who have been honored are the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs and the other newly appointed senior counsel present here today and referred to by name by your registrar. It now remains for this court to accept the petition of the Attorney General to admit him as senior counsel and to grant him the privileges associated with that status, including admitting him to the inner bar. Your Honors, I have the pleasure and indeed the honor of formally presenting the petition for admission to the inner bar of the Honorable Mohabir Anil Nandlall, the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs of Guyana. From the time Mr. Nandlall was admitted to practice on the 21st of October 1998 and began to appear in the Supreme Court soon thereafter, it was difficult to ignore him. Without an imposing stature or a resounding voice, not having yet developed his recognizable facility with the English language that he deploys today, he was nevertheless a young man with a noticeable passion for law and legal practice. He was made for the legal profession and devoted his considerable energies to representing his clients. He had and still has a mission. Today, no one who reads his submissions or listens to his arguments can fail to be impressed by the magnitude of his efforts and scholarship, the volume of authorities, the depth of analytical skill, and the compelling and persuasive conclusions, even if the courts do not always agree with him. Your Honors, it is well known, as only lawyers can know, not because we have special gifts, but merely because we are part of the profession, that the intellectual challenges can be enormously stimulating. Some only see it as a job. Some only as a means of livelihood. But those who are smitten remain hooked for life. Mr. Nandlall belongs to the last category. He has a degree of passion for the legal profession that I have seen in few. With that passion, combined with the position he holds, we expect a great leap in developments regarding the administration of justice and the development of law. Born on the 17th of February 1973, a month after I was admitted to practice to the day. Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall is from the East Coast, from where I also hail. Was educated at Monrepo Primary, then Queen's College. He received his legal education at the University of Guyana and the Hugh Wooding Law School. He is today, as we know, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, a member of the 12th Parliament of Guyana, Secretary of the Guyana Defense Board, and a member of the National Security Council. He served as Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs and member of the 10th Parliament from the 5th of December 2011 to the 18th of May 2015. A member of the 9th Parliament, 2006 to 2011. He was an executive member of the Bar Association from 2003 to 2005 and 2007 to 2008. Mr. Nandlall was a member of the Disciplined Forces Commission in 2003 to 2004 and was admitted to practice in Trinidad and Tobago in 2007. Mr. Nandlall has already distinguished himself by appearing in at least 15 reported cases, which I have listed but will not repeat here. Some are very interesting. One is a very early case of the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is Brent Griffith against the Guyana Revenue Authority. It was reported in the 2006 West Indian reports. The issue in Brent Griffith was whether the Guyana Revenue Authority is an agent of the state. And that was decided in a Guyana case a few years earlier in Clarence Chu against the Attorney General in the High Court. And it was reversed in our Court of Appeal. And then the Brent Griffith case relied on the High Court decision and restored the position that was decided by our High Court. I mentioned that little story, Your Honor, to point out how important it is to the maintenance and development of justice in Guyana is the existence of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Whether we agree with their decisions or not, and I have publicly criticized decisions of the CCJ. That's not the issue. As a member of Parliament from 2006 to 2020, Mr. Nandlall contributed to a large number of legislative efforts, which I have listed but will not recite. But, Your Honor, many people do not remember the days when it was impossible to get an official gazette, and when some official gazettes were deliberately not available, when we had to line up at the office of the president to purchase one. Now, the official gazette is accessible to everyone as a result of the Official Gazette Act of 2012. The Deeds and Commercial Registries Authority Act has transformed the administration of these departments and has made it user-friendly, not only to the legal profession, but to the citizens of Guyana. And so, Those are contributions made directly by Mr. Nandlall. Your Honor, other noted legal contributions by Mr. Nandlall as Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs include the revision and publication of the Nandlall edition of the Laws of Guyana 2012. And after a hiatus of over 4 decades, and the completion of the publication of the last set of Guyana law reports, he also represented Guyana and the Caribbean in Europe, North America, and other regions of the world in various matters of law and policy. With this extensive record of achievements, we can confidently look forward to revolutionary changes going forward. We do not have to invent or reinvent the wheel. Countries close to us and even further afield have left us far behind. There are many issues that require attention. Some are being attended to already, such as decriminalizing possession of small amounts of marijuana for personal use. This is a commendable first step to legalizing the production, sale, and export of marijuana, a more controversial proposition. The restructuring and appointment of the Law Reform Commission is on its way. We await the repealing of archaic laws criminalizing private behavior, called for recently by Bishop Francis Aline. Anti-corruption legislation, enforceable code of conduct for all elected and non-elected public officials, starting from cabinet members and permanent secretaries right down to NDC officials and department heads, to be managed by an integrity commission with enhanced powers, and electoral and constitutional reform. Just as law reform was a signal achievement of the Attorney General in his last term of office, he can undertake historically transformative initiatives in this term of office if he so chooses. We wish him every success. Your Honors, I respectfully pray that the petition of Mohabir Anil Nandlall be granted. Thank you.
Mr. Nandlall, may I invite you to make your presentation on behalf of the newly appointed senior counsel.
The Honorable Chancellor of the Judiciary, the Honorable Chief Justice, Honorable Justices of Appeal, Honorable Judges of the High Court, Senior Counsel, Messrs. Ramkaran and Stoby, colleagues, admittees to the inner bar, counsel present in court, relatives of all, ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply humbled by the opportunity afforded to me to offer my brief remarks on this very momentous occasion. Your Honors, I want to begin by recognizing Almighty God, Bhagwan Sri Ram, for making this journey possible. I want to thank His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali for seeing it fit to confer silk upon me. I want to thank Senior Counsel Hari Narayan Ramkaran for his most charitable, flattering, and generous remarks in presenting my humble petition. I want to thank Your Honors most profusely for coming out in this festive season to do this admission and to hear my petition. Your Honors, the journey to arrive at this destination was long, sometimes arduous, and challenging, as well as gratifying and enjoyable. The knowledge acquired has been vast and unquantifiable. The life experience garnered has been overwhelming as it was immeasurable. And I must acknowledge the immense contribution of so many who have made this accomplishment possible. It is obvious that I cannot mention the names of everyone, but Your Honor, it would be remiss of me if I do not single out a few for a special mention. I must thank my parents for nurturing me and guiding me in the right direction, financing my studies, of course. I want to thank and recognize the efforts of my uncle, Forde Narayan Singh Ramischan, an attorney at law of the Trinidad Bar, who first planted the idea into my head at a very tender age that I should pursue a legal career. My subsequent association with him at his chambers in Trinidad and Tobago confirmed to me that my calling was indeed in the legal profession. Your Honors, I take great pride in saying that I had the grand advantage, nay privilege, to work and associate with many legal giants that this great profession has produced in our country. Each of them nurtured and shaped my career in one way or another. They include the late and legendary Sir Fenton Ramsahoy of Queen's Counsel, and a former Attorney General, former Chairman of the Council of Legal Education, and a distinguished Caribbean lawyer, former Attorney General Dudnot Singh, under whose tutelage and in whose chambers I spent many years. In my view, Your Honors, he was the most charismatic advocate I had the opportunity to see perform in a court. Not far behind, Your Honor, was another former Attorney General and Senior Counsel, whose suave flair and flamboyance are forever etched in my mind. I speak of the unimitable Bernard Celestino de Santos. Your Honor, I must recognize also what I have learned from my adversaries. All the lawyers that I have called so far are lawyers that I happen to associate with or appear with on the same side. I must recognize Mr. Rex Herbert McKay as perhaps the most formidable adversary I have ever faced. His tenacity and aggression at the age that he wielded it was an inspiration. I want to acknowledge the contribution of persons like Mr. Ashton Chase, Mr. Robin Stobie, who is here with us, Mr. Ramkaran, of course, from whom I silently learned. They don't even know how they have shaped my mind and my thinking. Your Honors, I also want to recognize the contributions of persons like Vikram, Aditya, Vidyasagar, Puran, and my long-standing junior, Manoj Narayan. They have contributed significantly. And last but not least, Your Honor, I want to thank my clientele, drawn of this society and across this great landscape, as well as in the diaspora, who have given me the great opportunities which I have been presented with to exhibit my learning and to hone my skill. I never had the opportunity, and perhaps never will, of working for the large multinational corporations or the banks, like my two learned senior. I have always worked for the ordinary working people of my country. And I would venture to say, Your Honor, that I serve them well simply by the fact that most of them, if not all, who started with me 22 years ago were still with me quite recently when I was in private practice. Your Honors, I have learned that the law is indeed a jealous mistress. But I have also learned that once you serve her well, the law becomes a very generous mistress. Everything that I have achieved in my life was achieved through my practice of the law. If I am a good politician, it is because I am a good lawyer. If I am a good attorney general, it is because I am a good lawyer. If I am a good member of parliament, it is because I am a good lawyer. The law, Your Honor, is the greatest of all professions. One can be the greatest scientist. One can be the greatest medical practitioner. One can be the greatest engineer. But it is the law and the lawyer that protect the great discoveries of the scientists, that maintain civility and civilization for that doctor to practice medicine. I say that, Your Honor, to make an appeal that lawyers must understand that role. They must understand the great responsibility that devolve upon them by merely being a member of this great profession. Lawyers have a duty not to use and abuse and manipulate the law in the pursuit of sinister agendas.
Would have mentioned the complaint mechanism to be easily accessible on all platforms. Now, when I think about
will require our collective inputs. Judges must be prepared to rule in accordance with law and do so swiftly. Judges must be equally ready and able and willing to enforce their own decisions. Nothing saps public confidence from a judiciary quicker than its inability to enforce its own orders. My regrettable experience on this issue is a bitter one. Only once in 22 years I have succeeded in prosecuting a contempt of court action. And Your Honors, we see every day murder cases being established. Persons are convicted. Decades of sentences are imposed. And you come to the court with a contempt of court application to protect and preserve the administration of justice, to get the court to enforce its own orders. And it is a most uphill task. I am not unfamiliar that it is quasi-criminal. I am not unaware that the burden of proof is different. I know that it is a higher burden. But it is not improbable, nor is it impossible. And Your Honor, when the orders of the courts are not enforced by the courts themselves, court order loses its majesty. Litigants ignore them with impunity, and the administration of justice suffers tremendously. Our nation is at an unprecedented precipice. The oil and gas sector is projected to transform our nation. The legal profession and indeed the judiciary must be prepared for the new heights which our nation expects to achieve. We must equip ourselves and we must be able to rise to the occasion. It will require an almost complete overhaul. We have to build a new legal architecture. In the coming year, a complete body of new oil and gas and related legislation will be enacted. Many are currently in draft. A completely modern arbitration architecture is currently a work in progress. A new legislation in relation to hotel and the hospitality sector will have to be enacted. These include legislation for condominiums, townhouses, zoning, and in relation to commercial and industrial use of land. These are all new legislative vistas that will open up, which will require extensive training, and in some cases even specialized training, beginning with law students, lawyers, and judges alike. So the immediate future is both exciting as it will be challenging. And we must, as a profession, be prepared to overcome these challenges. In closing, I am not oblivious to the new and onerous responsibilities which the conferment of silk brings. I will endeavor to discharge them to the best of my abilities. Sharing knowledge and guiding young lawyers are what I enjoy doing. I do it every day at the Attorney General Chambers. Unfortunately, not being in private practice, I will be unable to enjoy the new regime of fees which still attracts. But as I said earlier, it has never been and it will never be about remuneration. Whenever I am back in private practice, I'll continue to attract and work for the ordinary people of my country. My destiny is tied to them. Lastly, I appeal to the profession to do as much pro bono work as possible. Throughout my career, I have done this. I have never turned away a client who has had a just grievance on the account of his inability to pay. It is one of the duties of the legal profession. I hark back to the ancient times when lawyers never charged fees, but an offering was made and affixed to that little pocket at the back of the gown. That is how it used to be. And while in today's world it is impossible to return to that practice, it is not impossible to do a fair amount of pro bono work in ensuring as far as possible that justice is denied to no one. Your Honor, with those remarks, I ask that my petition be granted as presented by learned senior counsel. I thank Your Honors profoundly.
At this juncture, we'll have the changing of the ropes. Could I ask the newly appointed senior counsel to stand for the ceremonial changing of the ropes? Thank you. Senior counsel, may I invite you now to take your seat at the inner bar. Senior counsel, Mr. Robin Stovey, may I ask you to make your presentation?
In whom all things are possible. Your Honor, Justice Madam Janet Cummings, Chancellor. Your Honor, Madam Roxanne George Wiltshire, Chief Justice. Justice of Appeal, Your Honor, and Gregory. Judges of the High Court, Your Honors, Justice Brassington Reynolds, Justice Arnana, who are present here today. Other judges of the Court of Appeal and the High Court who are not present physically today, but with us virtually. Attorney General, Mr. Anil Nandlall, who was just taking his seat in the front table, the inner bar table. All other judges, all other persons whom have joined us by remote link in this new form of communication of our wishes at this time. Fellow senior counsels, members of the bar, other luminaries who I acknowledge, who've been kind enough either to attend in person or virtually and witness this extraordinary but pleasing ceremony when 5 members of the practicing bar are recognized and afforded this singular honor before their peers of being elevated to the status of senior counsel. This is a most prestigious acknowledgement and respect for the work and accomplishment of these attorneys, both in the cloistered environment of the courts as well as the wider world, where reliance is placed on studied opinions and advice. We have before you, Your Honors, Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Senior Counsel, Timothy Monroe Jonas, Senior Counsel, Jamela Aisha Ali, Senior Counsel, Roysdale Alton Forde, Senior Counsel, and Stanley Alfred Moore, Senior Counsel. It is my distinct pleasure to bid welcome to the inner bar to all these most distinguished legal practitioners who have been recognized for their hard work, outstanding ability, and forensic skills in the promotion of their clients' affairs, and with a presentation and dedication to high quality in their work that has resulted in the advance of our legal system, striving as it still is to solidify its identity and break free from being a past protege of the British Empire and become an active colleague in the Caribbean formulation of countries. We have been fascinated this year at the battles between the contestants in the various actions emanating from the no confidence vote and the recount of the election ballots. 4 of our honorees today have had some involvement in these actions, some more intimately than others. But from their vast work output and strong forensic skills, we were able to identify the shaping of certain legal principles in the interpretation of both our Constitution and our political legislation. Perhaps not aptly, but I recollect that the Bible says, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. So that guides me to commence my welcome presentation of the attorneys individually. First, I have chosen to identify Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Senior Counsel. He is the current Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs of Guyana. Anil was called to the bar on the 21st day of October 1998, having previously served as an in-service student with Mr. Dudnot Singh, Senior Counsel, now deceased, unfortunately. Other colleagues who graduated in the same year included Lyndon Amsterdam, Fidela Corbin, now Justice Corbin, Emily Dodson, Marcy Nadir, Nicola Peer, now Land Court Judge Peer, and Unrich Walder. I may have missed some, but it was a large list, so please forgive me. In fact, before Anil came into practice, he was immersed in the law through the auspices, as he had said, of his uncle in Trinidad, Mr. Uday Rameshchan. And that uncle is the one with whom I understand he stayed during his learning of his A-level years. But it is also there, I understand, that his contact with Dean Dudnot Singh, Senior Counsel, commenced. When he entered practice in Guyana, he did so with Mr. Vic Puran, now deceased, operating out of that famous landmark, the First Federation Life Building. Later, he moved to Brickdam and Sandal Place, returned to Trinidad briefly in 2007 to be admitted to the bar of Trinidad and Tobago. Not long after that, he made his way into politics. During this time, he started his own law firm of Mohabir A. Nandlall and Associates. Bhagwati Chambers, I believe, is the name. First at Brickdam and then on South Road. And we all know that that has become a hub of activities, particularly for promising young lawyers. Anil is also an avid table tennis fan and became president of the Guyana Table Tennis Association in 2007 to 2008. He has, as has been reported, served on the Guyana Bar Association in 2 stints. His interest in politics brought him to Parliament between 2006 and 2011. In 2011, he was appointed Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs up to 2015. He's probably likely to be recognized as the youngest attorney to serve as Attorney General, which in itself says volumes about his ability and aptitude. He has a great deal of reports in the cases. 1 or 2 I'll touch on, only very briefly to mention. Brent Griffith, already referred to by my friend, versus Guyana Revenue Authority in 2006, which I'm given to understand was the first appeal heard by the CCJ, and in fact, the first appeal out of Guyana. Another important milestone was Ramdas and Jairam in 2008, which saw the entire bench of the CCJ sitting to hear this landmark case on agreements of sale and immovable property. Other well-known cases, such as Ram Kishun versus Funky Fung in 2010, which I might add Sakwe Vote, he could not succeed against yours truly. Then Rudisa Beveridge versus State of Guyana in 2014, and others, which have been of constitutional and election importance, such as the recent cases as Mustafa versus the Attorney General, Christopher Ram versus the Attorney General. Cases of great significance, cases which we as lawyers within the practice know extracted a huge workload and a very significant approach to the law. He told me some years ago, Your Honors, that he was going to buy his silk gown from Eden Ravenscroft. But I told him that he could buy it, but he couldn't wear it. Well, I'm happy to say now, Your Honors, that he's wearing it much deservedly and skillfully and most timely. And I welcome him individually, as I have said, to this profession and the upper reaches of this profession. Timothy Monroe Jonas, Senior Counsel, was called to the bar in 1996, having previously studied law in Cave Hill for 2 years, as it was then required, 1 year in Guyana and 2 years in Cave Hill. Some of his associates at the time included Gamal Mohammed Khan, Joanne Barlow, now Justice Barlow, Anne McLennan, now Chief Magistrate, Shauna Griffith, now Justice Griffith in Barbados, and Taney Hoosty, the current president of the bar, now a partner in the firm of Fraser and Hoosty. Timothy joined the Attorney General's chambers as State Counsel on his return in 1996 and immediately became involved in lecturing law, which he did for the advanced level law in Queen's College and the Institute of Distance and Continuing Education at UG. That, I think, is the years 1996 to 2002. During that time, his interest in legal aid was piqued, and it committed him to serving as a managing attorney at the Legal Aid Clinic in 1998. At the same time, he joined the prestigious law firm of the Careys, Fitzpatrick, and Curran. where he has continued to the present time and is now the managing partner and head of chambers. He has been a past president of the Guyana Bar Association in 2010 for 2 years, continues his interest in the association up to the present, as he's still a member of the Bar Council. He served as a director in very many companies. I'll name a few. Demerara Distillers Limited, Guyana Publications, that's Tabrook News, MCG Investments, Giftland Mall, Hand in Hand Trust Corporation, Caribbean Chemicals, and Ogle Airports, Inc. Outside of these directorships, he was chairman of the Guyana Competition and Fair Trading Commission in 2015 and 2018. And in 2018, commissioner in the CARICOM Competition Commission. His legal career has been most notable. In many cases, he has fought, both in the Supreme Court and in the CCJ. I remember some of these cases. For example, Ross and Sinclair, 2007, Guyadin, Public Bank, 2014, Dipcon, Attorney General, 2017, Rodriguez, and the New Building Society in 2018, GNCB and Prasad, 2018, Ramsahai and Nissel, 2018, Arnold Sankar versus GRDB in 2018, application by Dharmi Singh in 2017, and Christopher Prasad versus Tulsi Prasad Limited in 2019. He has represented the Bar Association in cricket, where he is noted for being a bit of an all-rounder. And he's played in the Lawyers Cricketing World Cup, representing the Guyana Bar Association. That is in Barbados in 2013, India in 2015, Sri Lanka in 2017. Unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to disclose the results. I turn now to the only rose among the thorny members of our inner bar, Ms. Jamela Aisha Ali, Senior Counsel. Jamela is the daughter of Muntaz Ali, well-known barrister who practiced out of B.O. Adams QC's chambers, which is now Macroom and Macroom, up to the year 2000. There, he had a thriving civil practice and some emphasis on property law. Jamela, when she came out to practice in 1989, had been in a small batch of students that did their 2 years at Cave Hill to obtain their degree before completing at UWooding. Among those I recollect was Diana Insinali, now Justice Insinali. Her return to Guyana saw her ensconced in the Attorney General's chambers, where she later completed her Masters of Laws in Legislative Drafting in the year 1997, before moving into private practice in the year 2002. She moved into the chambers of Mr. Rex McKay, SC, which was an excellent choice, where she has continued to practice to the present. Jamela has been very busy at the bar, which accounts for her belated recognition in the once largely male-dominated arena of civil practice at the bar. She's been active both in the Supreme Court as well as the CCJ, where she can claim the distinction of being the most female lead in appearances from Guyana or elsewhere, and where she's had the distinction of lead appearances in the first running down case at the CCJ, Dukin Kaisuko 2015, first lead appearance in a mining case, Wayne Vera and GGMC in 2017. There are many other worthy cases of mention and note. I'll just mention a couple. James Ramsahai versus Linden Mining Enterprise Limited and Bauxite Industry Development Company Limited in 2014. Walter Ramsahai versus Glenn Lal and National Media and Publishing Company in 2016. She has also qualified as a mediator, which is her passion, having trained under international mediators from Canada, United States, and Trinidad. And she holds a certificate for service as a faculty member in advanced mediation training. I think that was in 2008. This has led to training in arbitration, which is the new upcoming concept. when in June 2018 she became a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators in London. Her accomplishments are many, not least in being only the second person of the Muslim faith to obtain this honor, behind her cousin Shalimar Ali Haq, the current DPP. And both as women recognized for their sterling work and dedication to the rule of law in Guyana. I turn now, Your Honors, to Roysdale Alton Forde, Senior Counsel. Roysdale attended the University of Guyana, achieving his law degree, and then was among those 25 students in 1995 that had to go to Trinidad at the law school 2 months late in November because of the incomplete arrangements brought about by the change caused with the completion of the 3-year LLB course in Guyana for the first time. So that is when the change came from no longer going 1 year in Guyana, UG, and 2 years at Cave Hill. I'm told that there were severe difficulties to students at that time in Trinidad from Guyana, difficulties of acceptance of their degree by their peers at UWooley, but they stuck it out. Roysdale and his compatriots distinguished themselves by obtaining their legal education certificate in 1997. Among those with Roysdale was Toussaint Boyce, Sanjeev Dattadin, Tracy Gibson, Don Holder Alert, Kashir Khan, Parmanan Mohalal, Darshani Ramdani, and many others, which are too numerous to mention. Roysdale, who was called to the bar in Grenada in 2004 and Dominique in 2005, has founded the law firm of Forde, Amsterdam, and Lewis, I think in the year 2004. And in the chambers at Hartfield Street, I suppose he had to obtain a visa from Clarence Hughes to do so at that time. Roysdale has had several notable cases which are worthy of recollection in his career. And that has included cases in which he's had an appearance with Rex McKay, Senior Counsel, Keith Messiah, Senior Counsel, Miles Fitzpatrick, Senior Counsel. A couple of those cases are, for example, Attorney General versus Caterpillar Americas Company in 2000, Gonzalez and Lecker in 2001, Ganga Prasad and the Chief Election Officer in 2016, and in 2009, in Dominica Calais Ship Holding Company versus Runwen Energy Trading Limited in Grenada. No, I think that was in Dominica. In Grenada in 2004, Garvey Lewison Liquidator Bank Cozier Limited. So he has been far and wide. To say nothing of the plethora of constitutional electoral cases in 2019 and in this year, to which he has been a contesting lawyer. For example, as we all know, Christopher Raman, Attorney General, application by Yolita Moore, application by Messenger Jones. Important cases, as I've said before. Roysdale has also been involved in such pursuits as being a member of the Bipartisan Committee on Broadcasting in 2001, director of the Guyana National Newspaper Limited in 2001 to 2003, chairman of the Gaming Authority of Guyana 2017 to 2020, and lately he has become a member of Parliament. It's quite clear, Your Honors, that the senior counsels have been very busy this year and deserve to be recognized for the hard work they have been put to. Finally, Stanley Alfred Moore, Senior Counsel. Stanley Moore, Senior Counsel, obtained his LLB, London in 1962, LLM, University College London in 1968. He's called to the bar in Guyana, having sat dinners at Lincoln's Inn, that's my end, and being called to the bar in England in 1970. Subsequently, he was admitted to the Grenada Bar in 71, Antigua Bar in 89. This is explained by the fact that he had a period of pupillage in the chambers of Sir Edward Gardner QC, very famous QC, before returning to Guyana and entering the chambers of Rex Herbert McKay, Senior Counsel, with whom he later established the firm of McKay and Moore, where he presently practices. But in between, much activity by Stanley. A wide and varied experience in so many fields of endeavor that it is impossible for me in a short space to relate, fascinating though they are. I'll mention a few to show the astonishing diverse nature of this appointee and honoree, and why he so ably justifies the distinction of senior counsel. He served as a magistrate in 1973 in Guyana, acting High Court judge in 1979, resident judge in the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court between 1992 and 96, senior resident judge in British Virgin Islands in 1996, justice in the Supreme Court of the Bahamas Southern Division in 2000, senior judge of the Supreme Court of the Bahamas between 2001 and 2002, and Justice of Appeal in the Republic of Botswana in 2004 to 2012, and the Kingdom of Swaziland between 2010 and 2014. Amongst all of these activities, as if that was not sufficiently exhausting, he served as Attorney General in Montserrat between 1990 and 92, subsequently acting as governor on Montserrat between 1990 and 92, when required. During this time, he was also a member of the Executive Council of Cabinet between 1990 and 92. Further experience in the realm of governance came during earlier in Guyana between 1981 and 82, when he served as a senior cabinet minister of Home Affairs and member of parliament between 81 and 82. He even acted as Minister of Justice and Attorney General in the absence of the famous Dr. Mohammed Shabadeen, Queen's Counsel. Stanley had a desire to return to private life, though, in 1982, due to some personal differences with some of the then policies of nationalization. He's been involved in judicial education at the University of Guyana, Council Legal Education, Commonwealth Judicial Education Institute, and Institute of the Eastern Judicial Institute of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. And to think that it all began in his early years when he worked as a customs and excise officer before independence. Some of you may recollect that this was a source of many previous senior counsels, two of whom I will mention: Bernard DeSantis, senior counsel, and Richard Fields, senior counsel. What he hasn't mentioned, however, in his CV is his stint as a radio broadcaster, for which I think it was Radio Demerara at the time. He became most famous for his dramatic similes and exclamations in the heat of the moment during a live broadcast of cricket matches, such as his now famous words when he reported on a brilliant catch by Farid Bacchus as being like a Lukanani leaping out of the waters of the creek to catch a fly. Or his equally famous report about the crowd leaving Border at the end of the test match and wending its way down Regent Street like a slithering commodity. I think these memories alone and these achievements that I have related entitle Stanley to this honor as a gentleman of vast and creative experience, enriching the lore of our profession. And it is with these remarks, Your Honors, that I am pleased to offer congratulations of the senior bar to those new appointees and to bid you welcome to take your place at this table of deserved excellence, where you will now dedicate yourselves to improving the legal arena which we practice in. I thank you, Your Honors. Great.
Thank you, Mr. Stobie. May I now invite Mr. Taney Husti, President of the Guyana Bar Association, to make his remarks, which he will do remotely.
Thank you, Registrar. Honorable Chancellor, Honorable Chief Justice, Honorable Justices of Appeal, Justices of the High Court, Commissioner of Title, Madam Pierre, Chief Magistrate, colleagues, seniors, it is with a sense of privilege that I deliver this address this morning on behalf of the Bar Association of Guyana. On behalf of the Bar, we thank the Judiciary for facilitating me delivering this address virtually in keeping with our present reality. First, for the record, we take this opportunity to extend sincere congratulations to our seniors today. For the Bar, today marks a day of pride and privilege. And it is with these words that I continue this short address. The year 2020 marks 40 years for the Bar Association in its present construct. Our rules were approved at our annual general meeting on the 10th of April, 1980. And the architect of those rules we have just heard from Mr. Robin Stobie, Senior Counsel. It is therefore a privilege for the Bar to have Senior Counsel Stobie as a Vice President. Sometimes they say 40 and is a new age and life begins at 40. But for us at the Bar, I can say today we have come of age and we have matured and we are much stronger. We, as a council today, at the conclusion of this ceremony, will have 4 senior counsel who will form part of the Bar's executive. It is therefore with that sense of pride that I deliver this brief address. And it's also with the sense of privilege of having served, and I'm serving with these 4 senior counsel on the Bar Council. Robin Stobie, Senior Counsel, K.A. Juman Yasin, Senior Counsel, will be joined by Ms. Jamela Ali, Senior Counsel, and Mr. Timothy Jonas, Senior Counsel, as members of the executive of the Bar. Ms. Ali is a current Vice President, and Mr. Jonas is a past President, as you would have heard. While the Honorable Attorney General sits in his capacity as the legal head of the Bar, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge his service to the Bar Council over the past years. And it is therefore with a sense of privilege that we, as members of the Bar Council, serve our members, the wider profession, and the society. And we share in the accomplishment of our colleagues. Your Honors, these accomplishments today serve as the basis of pride of not only the inductees or the admittees to the inner bar, but for us as a whole profession. Fortunately, senior counsels Ramkaran and Stobie have mentioned the distinguished careers of our colleagues, and I see Ms. Chase there smiling, and some of the judges will smile that I have not much more to say, save for the following 2 things. As I did in my address in June 2019, I have instructions from the Secretary of the Bar to highlight the following. 2 of our silk, Nandlall, Senior Counsel, and Jonas, Senior Counsel, went to Queen's College. I, myself, went to Queen's College. Mr. Stobie is a graduate of Queen's College. I say this with an additional pride because our Secretary of the Bar, Ms. Pauline Chase, is a Vice President of the Queen's College Association, or Students Association. At these times, we're reminded of a journey as we started off today. And in some ways, the journey continues and begins. For us at the Bar, we've developed a tradition from the period of graduation from law school to the admission of new attorneys to have senior counsel address newly admitted attorneys at law, guiding them on the importance of elements of practice at the Bar. Through this, we at the Bar endorse mentorship, shared experiences, and seek to continue the high traditions of the Bar. With the increase in the cohort of senior counsel today, we trust that the future members of the Bar will benefit from their years of practice and experience. In conclusion, and I see no smiles, but in conclusion, on behalf of the Bar, heartiest congratulations once again to all the members of the Inner Bar, more particularly Mr. Stanley Moore, Senior Counsel, Ms. Jamela Ali, Senior Counsel, Mr. Timothy Jonas, Senior Counsel, Mr. Roysdale Forde, Senior Counsel, Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Senior Counsel. And for the Bar on occasions like these, and I know that Senior Counsel Stobie could not quote himself, so I will quote him from his address in 2018. We in the Bar Association hail you and recognize your contributions to the profession and join with others who have expressed their accolades in your induction to the Inner Bar. In all the circumstances, we offer every sincere wish for continued success and contributions to the law in Guyana and elsewhere. I thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Husti. And before the Honorable Madam Justice Roxanne George makes her remarks, I wish to invite our newly appointed senior counsel to make their responses in the following order. Mr. Stanley Moore, Senior Counsel, Ms. Jamela Ali, Senior Counsel, Mr. Timothy Jonas, Senior Counsel, Mr. Roysdale Forde, Senior Counsel. The Honorable Attorney General having already given his response. Before I invite you, Mr. Moore, I understand that we are joined this morning remotely by Sir Dennis Byron, and I just wish to acknowledge his presence with us this morning. Mr. Moore.
Thank you so much, Madam Registrar. May it please Your Honor, the Honorable Chancellor, the Honorable Chief Justice, the Honorable members of the Court of Appeal, my fellow senior counsel, members of the Bar. I have received honors from many other parts of the world, but the honor which I received today in my own country, from my own countrymen, from the highest court in my own country, is the highest and greatest honor that I believe that I have received. I would speak briefly about the route which led to my being where I am this morning. I would first wish to pay tribute to the two families that I belong to. The Walcotts, that's my mother's family, and the Moores. In the Moores, I want to pay tribute to the Richards, to the Alberts, to the Nelsons, and the Moores. I say so because they have been a great inspiration to me in everything which I have done, They have been supportive, and they have played a great role in my being who I am and where I am today. There are a number of monitors who have played an outstanding role in my development. Going back to the little village of Kitty, as it then was, where I was brought up, and it is correct to say that I have been brought up by the village of Kitty, by the St. James the Less Anglican School, by Father Wilward Sayers, by Schoolmaster Pollard and Schoolmaster Moore, and all the various teachers there. And I pay them a great debt of respect. I was an external student of London University, and that is how I got my LLB degree. But I was fortunate in so many ways, one of them being admitted to a class of students which was conducted by the late, great Guyana scholar Frederick Rudolph Wills. And some of that, the graduates of that school include Chancellor Desiree Bernard, Chancellor Aubrey Bishop, Duke Pollard, who became a member of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Mohammed Ayub Ali Makdoum, and others. At that time, around 1958 or 59, I met a person by the name of Rex Herbert McKay. My father, Llewellyn Cornet Moore, left Guyana when I could hardly have remembered him well. And he was one of those who went off to do battle with Queen and country and didn't return. My younger brother, Carlisle Ethelbert Moore, Dr. Carlisle Ethelbert Moore, who was a Guyana Scholarship runner-up, was the bright one in the family. And so having left around 18 or 19 to pursue studies abroad, he never really did return to Guyana, although we corresponded. But the person who had been a father and brother and friend and mentor to me during all those years was Rex Herbert McKay. Another mentor, some of them I might not have time to mention, was Sir Joachim Gonzalez Sabola. So when in this same room, I was admitted to the Utter Bar upon the petition presented by Joseph Oscar Fitzclarence Haynes, Chancellor, and Rex McKay was his junior, I was then admitted by Sir Joachim Gonzalez Sabola, who turned out to be the Chief Justice of the Bahamas and also the President of the Bahamas Court of Appeal. And he was one of the persons responsible for my being admitted to the bar, or rather admitted to the judiciary of the Bahamas. I have a great regard for Guyanese. Sir Ted Braffith wrote a book on being a Guyanese, and I have an even greater regard for Guyanese judges because they are, to my mind, some of the finest judges in the world, and they have been great achievers. When I went to the Bahamas, I discovered that there were some judges, some lawyers rather, in the Bahamas who literally protested outside of the courts of that country against the appointment of Guyanese judges in the Bahamas. But the time came when those same judges, those same lawyers, paid the highest tribute and regard to their Guyanese judges. And up to this day in the Bahamas, there are several Guyanese judges who are still sitting on the benches of the Bahamas. While I was there, a great Guyanese judge, Justice George, sat as the president of the Bahamas Court of Appeal. And so I take great pride in being a Guyanese and in being a Guyanese judge. There are two things which I would wish to suggest. In every country in which I've been, the governments have the highest regard for their courts and their judges and their judiciary. But in an imperfect world of limited resources, sometimes the resources made available to the courts are not what the governments would have wished the judges to have had they had the necessary resources. It was Justice Johan Kriegler of South Africa who said that the courts, the judiciary, had no sword and had no purse, and therefore it was dependent upon the executive for their resources. And so, without the resources which the governments and the executive would have wished for them to have, the judiciary nevertheless did their best with what they had. And before I say, there are two suggestions which I wish to make. One is that the judges of this country receive the assistance of judicial assistants or judges' clerks, as they are referred to in certain jurisdictions. I had the privilege of visiting the Supreme Court of the state of Florida, where their honors of that Supreme Court were served by full-time judicial assistants. And in addition to full-time judicial assistants, they were also served by students who in their vacation times were recruited to the court to assist the judges. The other thing which I would wish to suggest is that if the resources become available, the judges be allowed to have the resources of court reporters. In the jurisdiction of the Bahamas in 1996, when I first went there, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the lawyers would stand before the court holding in their hands a document resembling something like this, which was a transcript of everything which had been said and done in the court that morning session, which ended at 11:30. The Bahamas, which did not have an as elaborate court reporting system as the British Virgin Islands, also had a court reporting system, which was of great assistance to lawyers and to the courts. And so my plea would be that when time and resources become available, court reporters be appointed and also judicial assistants. Having said that, I will end by saying that today is a great day in my life. I have received no greater honor than being appointed and being admitted now to the inner bar of this, my own country. Just one final story. As you heard, I've traveled and lived in many places. And in the Kingdom of Swaziland, one morning, feeling homesick, I sent to a restaurant and ordered a cup of dal, thinking that that would cure my homesickness. In fact, it aggravated it because it had no taste like the taste of dal to which I have been accustomed in this, my beloved Guyana. There is no place for me greater than more beloved than my beloved Guyana. Madam Chancellor, Madam Chief Justice, members of the bar, I thank you so much.
Honorable Chancellor, Honorable Chief Justice, Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, judges of the Court of Appeal and the High Court, members of the Inner and Outer Bar, other distinguished persons and well-wishers, including those participating virtually. 31 years ago, on the 12th of October, 1989, on the birth anniversary of my father, Mohammed Mumtaz Ali, attorney at law, I was admitted to the bar in the presence of my parents before the then Justice Desiree Bernard, who later became the Chief Justice, Chancellor, and a judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Today's special full court sitting to be admitted to the inner bar is an extra special occasion for me, as it is the birthday of my dear mother, Shireen Khan. My father would have been proud of me. My mother is not only proud, but elated and wanted to be here in person. I believe she is hearing us virtually. I know many of my friends and other family members are proudly joining virtually. I sat and I listened to Mr. Robin Stobie, Senior Counsel. I must say I'm overwhelmed and humbled by his kind words and compliments. I thank you. In addition to my father, a name that has been called by the two previous speakers, the Attorney General as well as Mr. Stanley Moore, Senior Counsel, I have to mention Mr. Rex McKay, Senior Counsel, who also played a huge role in my legal career. Since I commenced private practice in 2002, he has been a mentor to me. I wish to thank him personally for making this day possible. There is much controversy on the appointments of senior counsel. Based on the conferrals, it is difficult to discern the criteria used. Much has been said on this matter before, and much will be said unless and until a fair and transparent criteria is established. This is a tenet of good governance. Regarding my own appointment, I wish to thank former President Granger for the announcement of the appointment as senior counsel on the 31st of December 2019. I also wish to thank His Excellency President Mohammed Irfan Ali for issuing the instrument to me as a senior counsel. I also thank the Honorable Chancellor Jonas Cummins-Edwards and other members of the Judiciary who supported my appointment. On a personal note, integrity, adherence to a valued positions and values are much more important to me than the title of senior counsel. Although these are the very qualities befitting of this privilege, together with the achievements of a legal practitioner. I have always been a strong advocate for law reform and improvement in the justice and legal system, which can only take place with good policy decisions and competent legislative drafting capabilities. We are all familiar with the provision that the appointment of the Chancellor and the Chief Justice is made by the president with the agreement of the leader of the opposition. 18 years ago, I delivered a speech at the Ghana Bar Association's first law conference, and I quote from it. Legislation which states that before something can be done or someone appointed, there must be approval or consent of the opposition will more likely than not lead to a constitutional and political gridlock. This is because the formula amounts to a form of power sharing, and power sharing does not normally produce favorable results, even if the power sharing is disguised in the form of legislation. As an alternative, even if there is a general consensus, particularly by the governing party, to share power, it is expected that the experts would clearly define the power and make provision for the likely situation where the legislative mechanism produces a non-result or a non-meeting of the minds, and I might add, which has been happening in the last many years. The constitution reform process has produced many unrealistic and unworkable solutions without including alternative mechanisms. This unpalatable brew, which has resulted from this process, seems to be the recipe for enhancing political affiliation rather than ensuring the paramountcy of competence. End of quote. Your Honor, the reason I have quoted from this 2002 speech, which was published in 2003 by the UWI Barbados in the Caribbean Law Review, and repeated in 2007 in the Guyana Chronicle newspapers, is because it remains relevant today as we continue to have the disturbing situation of an acting chancellor and an acting chief justice due to the formula put forward by the policymakers. Even more startling is that this provision remains unchanged after almost 2 decades. Might I be permitted to say that the judiciary must always portray impartiality and predictability of rulings, and predictability of rulings must never be based on the advocate appearing, race, or political affiliation. Pre-COVID, I had been advocating for our justice system to synchronize with the Apex Court, the Caribbean Court of Justice, on e-filing and e-service of court documents. Post-COVID, I continue to champion the cause for e-filing and e-service of court documents. In this regard, the Supreme Court has launched a portal for filing documents. This is an excellent initiative by the judiciary. But let it be said that launching is not sufficient. The process must be effective, efficient, and must cater for long-term use. The wind of change is here. Today is testimony to that. Here we are. Some of us are in court physically wearing our masks. Others are part of this historic sitting using the virtual platform Zoom. This effort by the judiciary must be applauded. COVID has ensured that the use of technology has taken center stage. Many years ago, the judicial registry benefited from the digitalization of court documents. Having regard to this, there is no good reason why there is no access to efficient virtual legal searches and inquiries. This lack is a fundamental deficit. In this regard, I must commend the Deeds and Commercial Registry, both of whom are offering virtual services. And I believe this is part of the present Attorney General's goal of striving for efficiency and improved access to justice. I must say that the judiciary, led by the Honorable Chancellor and the Chief Justice, have responded to the COVID pandemic. For example, criminal courts have restarted. There is emphasis on urgent and domestic violence cases. Magistrate courts are operating. Virtual courts, we understand only, yes, they're operating now from the prison. And judges are operating courts virtually. There are many benefits in conducting virtual courts, as we have experienced over the last few months. We've conducted court fixtures using Zoom, Microsoft Teams for undefended divorces, other matters, case management conference, delivery of submissions and decisions. And I dare say that this is the new permanent normal. The exception, I believe, is cross-examination of witnesses in trial matters where material facts are in dispute. This cross-examination ought to be done in person when safety measures can be observed for all involved. The administration of justice and the rule of law is not a one-way dispensation. Members of the noble profession have an obligation not to file and present frivolous and vexatious cases with no prospect of success, not to mislead the honorable courts. And judges must ensure that their decisions are given in accordance with the law, be readily available, and the courts must be prepared to enforce their own orders. Having said that, I wish to thank the Almighty Allah for his guidance throughout my life. I also thank all of those who have congratulated me from near and far. They know who they are. For all your sentiments and compliments of congrats, well-deserved, long overdue, are overwhelming. I must make mention of the Executive Council of the Guyana Bar Association, my team members from Mediation Services International, and the Guyana Oil and Gas Consultancy, Inc. I also thank my friends and family members, my brothers, Abdul Ali and Mohammed Rabindra Ali, attorney at law, my sister Fauzia, my cousin, the DPP Shalimar Ali Haq, and I recognize her presence here, my niece Janet Adiba Ali, who's also present, attorney at law, and my nephews Mohammed Muntaz Ali, attorney at law, who's also present, and my other nephew Arshad, for their support throughout this journey. I could not end my presentation without thanking my assistant, Trudy Cummins, for her invaluable support and hard work in managing the law office and my practice. I end by saying I will continue to widen my legal horizon. As Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. And as stated in the Quran, my success can only come from Allah. I thank you very much, Your Honor.
May it please Your Honors, Honorable Chancellor, Honorable Chief Justice. I'm sorry, is this better? You hear me? Honorable Chief Justice, Justices of Appeal, and Judges of the High Court. In 1998, when I was at the Attorney General's chambers, I was sent to argue a tax case against ExxonMobil and was completely out of my depth, opposed by Miles Fitzpatrick Senior Counsel, before a phenomenal judge, Carl Singh. The outcome of that was inevitable. But Mr. Fitzpatrick, senior counsel, must have seen something, because he invited me immediately after to join the firm of the Carries Fitzpatrick and Curran. And without hesitation, I immediately accepted that offer on nothing more than a handshake, on no formal terms, on no arrangements, and with the impetuous stupidity of youth. And I have never regretted it. The learning curve for a young lawyer was amazing. There is nothing that can replace having as a tutor and then a sounding board someone who has the experience of many years at the bar practicing at the highest level. I heard my friend Nandlall speak to Do Not Sing, Fenton Ramsahoi, and others. It is something I believe that every young lawyer must do. Every young lawyer must find a senior lawyer to use as a sounding board to ask questions, because that is how you learn. A lawyer has to be a jack of all trades. When you represent a miner, you have to understand the Mining Act and how mining works. When you're doing a tax matter, you have to understand the land revenue. Insurance, banking, you have to know a little of everything. And for that reason, again, I agree with my friend Nandlall. The practice of law for me has been something that has allowed me to see how society works and how, as we careen through this life without breaks and without a rehearsal, how beautiful it is that humanity interacts in society, rubbing the wrong way sometimes, but for the most part getting along and progressing. Your Honors, my great-grandfather was an illiterate laborer on the sugar estate. And he had a dozen children. The youngest of them benefited from the fact that his siblings were all of working age and could therefore afford to send him to school. And he achieved that high dignity in those days of being admitted into the Guyana Police Force, the British Guyana Police Force. He died a corporal in the police force. Ronald Murphy Jonas. His son, Friar Ronald Jonas, was a teacher. And I am the son of Friar Ronald Jonas, and I stand here on the vanguard of 500 years of tradition borrowed from our colonizers, reminded that we are all of us products of slavery and indentureship, given the opportunity to rise by our wits, by our family loyalty, and by this interaction in our peculiar society. As we celebrate our own accomplishments, there is something that resonates for me. You see, I once thanked Mr. Fitzpatrick for teaching me the practice of law. And his response was immediately dismissive. He said, "You would have been a good lawyer without me. You didn't need me for that." Maybe. But there is something that I learned from him. Humanity. He was a humanitarian. And one thing that you learn in observing how we interact in society, in mining, in banking, in insurance, in this forum, you learn how important it is for us to hold up our humanity. And the best that we can do holding up our humanity is allowing our people to choose their leaders, And then equally important in this forum, preserving our independence so that we safeguard those people against excesses by our leaders. And that is what I have learned, is the only system that can work if our democracy is to be maintained. That in this forum, we safeguard the people against the excesses by their leaders. So while we pay attention to our accomplishments, what has come to my mind is that we must not overlook the importance of the others who hold us up. COVID, as my friend Ms. Ali has pointed out, has changed so much in our systems and our structures. And what it has brought out for me is that we are here, and I say this lightly, with a sense of self-importance, but we are held up by the amazing efficiency of the people who are the unsung heroes. We have marshals who are at UG. Many of our registrars are degreed people. The efficiency and competence with which the registrars, and your honors know a court is a judge, a registrar, and a marshal, not just a judge, with which our registrars adapted and made us more efficient in the service we deliver to the public has been remarkable. Ms. Seaforth, Ms. Chu, Ms. Nelson, have adapted. I got to call two males, Mr. Brian, Mr. Major, have adapted, have helped us, and hold us up so that we are delivering at long last a service that I can be proud of to the public, that we are not waiting years for trials to happen. With the good grace and hard work of our Chancellor and our inimitable Chief Justice, we are doing a good job. Part of that humanity also means that we look beyond just here to see who else is holding us up. For me, my personal champion and the person who has probably taught me the most about being a humanitarian is my wife, Nadia Segar, who is also a barrister admitted in England and Guyana. It is important for us to remember our function, which is to help the people, help the society, and safeguard the society. The twin pillar of democracy, allowing the people to choose their leaders, is transparency. That all systems must be open for public scrutiny so that the public can be assured that fairness and justice is done. That is why the common law and the Constitution require that court proceedings be held in public. Anybody can come to see what is being done, not in secret. And in the interest of transparency, a lot has been done in the past year, and I respectfully wish to acknowledge Justice Harnanan for his assistance in one aspect of that. I agree with my friend, Ms. Ali, that transparency needs to take place in our own systems, and hopefully Mr. Nandlall will honor what he said he will do. And in justice to Mr. Nandlall, he has already done much in terms of law reform and progress to help transparency in our systems. Your Honors, this is an important occasion, but it is not important because of us. It is important because we must demonstrate publicly that we are holding up the institutions and the traditions which make us a society, which make our country not a failed state, but a state moving forward, moving upward, a state to be proud of. We are part of that. And I think that going forward, it is for us now as leaders of the bar to add to that, to contribute to that, and to be of assistance to the court. And I hope that we live up to that expectation. I am very grateful to your honors. Thank you.
The Honorable Madam Chancellor, the Honorable Madam Chief Justice, Honorable Justices of the Court of Appeal, Honorable Justices of the High Court, retired Justices, Senior Counsel, the Madam Registrar, the Madam Deputy Registrar, members of the bar, family, and friends. The presentation this morning of a petition for my admission to the inner bar of the Supreme Court of Guyana is indeed a special occasion and a fitting juncture for me to reflect on the past 23 years as an attorney at law. Madam Chancellor, I give God thanks and praise for his blessings and his favor. I must take this opportunity to acknowledge my parents for their love and support and guidance. My parents instilled in me the value of education. I'm grateful that my mother is here to witness this ceremony. Unfortunately, my father, who is not here, passed away earlier this year, and I recall him being extremely happy when I informed him in January that I was appointed senior counsel. I would like to acknowledge the contribution and assistance and guidance that I received from my wife's mother, who died in October. That was also a very serious blow for our family. I also thank my wife and my children for their sacrifices and for their support over the years. Your understanding allowed me to pursue my profession, and I hope that you do appreciate that this is an achievement also for each of you. My siblings and my friends who supported me and encouraged me over the years, I owe you a special thank you. Having been appointed senior counsel, it is a privilege of the appointment to adorn a silk gown. Thoreau, the 19th century American naturalist and philosopher, posited, and I quote, "Mistrust any new enterprise that requires new clothes," end of quote. I believe, however, that I have no reason to mistrust this new enterprise that I am about to undertake or commence. This morning, Madam Chancellor, I stand proudly before this full court to be admitted as a senior counsel, the first attorney at law from the graduating class of the Bachelor of Laws from the University of Guyana to have been so appointed. And Chief Justice Madam Roxanne George would have taught us and lectured us those years, many years ago. Madam Chancellor, this is an achievement for the graduates of the law program of the University of Guyana, and in particular of my colleagues who endure the trials and tribulations, the headaches, the uncertainty, and the trauma as we move from year to year, culminating with graduating in 1995. It is also an achievement, Madam Chancellor, for that first class of graduates of the law program from the University of Guyana who entered the Heward Law School in 1995. We persevered against all odds, adversity, and hostility. Madam Chancellor, I have every confidence that joining the ranks of senior counsel in the future will be many more members of the bar who would have graduated from the University of Guyana. My development and growth as an attorney at law, I largely attribute to the guidance and mentoring that I received from senior counsel Rex McKay, OR, and senior counsel Messiah, OR. Both senior counsel Rex McKay and senior counsel Messiah embody what is really expected of a senior counsel. These distinguished gentlemen characterize the best of our profession, erudite, learned, patient, and at all times prepared to mentor, teach, and inspire. I've had the benefit of receiving support, guidance, and instruction from the bench and bar over the years. In this regard, I must thank former Chancellors Bernard and Singh. I'm grateful for the regular mandatory Sunday afternoon meetings at the home of former Chancellor Bishop, where he would set goals and timelines to me on an almost weekly basis. I wish to acknowledge the memory and contribution to the profession and to me personally, the Senior Counsel Britain, Valls and Fields, who are no longer with us. I also would like to acknowledge the contributions made by Mr. Stobie, SC, and current members of the Judiciary. While it is an honor to which most of us lawyers aspire, we must be careful not to strive unseemingly to have the honor bestowed on us. Campaigning in the newspapers or questioning the legitimacy or integrity of the entire system is unseemly and harmful to the profession and its public image. History will show that the admission of senior counsel by the full court in the year 2020 was preceded by litigation. I'm of the view that the litigation was neither necessary nor useful to establish the constitutional legitimacy of the institution of senior counsel. If the institution of proceedings or legal proceedings challenging the grant of senior counsel was actuated by a strong conviction that a grant of senior counsel was unconstitutional, such conviction was quite short-lived.
Madam Chancellor, it is my hope and expectation that the Guyana Bar Association will see the need to urgently implement a robust program of continuing legal professional development. If the legal profession is to discharge its duties and responsibilities to the Guyanese society, it must be updated with the necessary training, knowledge, and information to be competent. I believe that the time has come for the Bar Association to reflect on whether it adequately represents the interests of the members of the bar. In a society such as ours, there's so much more to be done by the Bar Association, and it can do to support the legal system and foster the creation of a just and equitable society. Madam Chancellor, I wish to assure the bench and bar that I will continue to use my intellect and ability to ensure that Guyana is a better country, that I will continue to do my best to uphold the best traditions of this noble and illustrious profession. I'm acutely conscious that the appointment of senior counsel recognizes one's skill, integrity, and position in the legal profession. We are called upon as senior counsel to furnish exemplary service to the legal system. Many regard the conferral of silk as the pinnacle of one legal career, the most successful point, the culmination of one's career. I wish to assure you, Madam Chancellor, and members of the judiciary present today, and those listening, that I have no intention of making it my pinnacle or my plateau. The conferral of silk is an extremely important and worthy recognition of one's contributions to the development of the law and the jurisprudence of one's country. I recognize that it brings additional responsibility and leadership obligations, which I intend to discharge earnestly. Madam Chancellor and the judges present, I accept this accolade and elevation to the rank and dignity of senior counsel with humility. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Senior Counsel. Madam Justice Roxanne George, Chief Justice, please make your presentation.
Honorable Chancellor of the Judiciary, Madam Justice Yonit Cummins Edwards, Justice Dawn Gregory and Justice Rishi Prasad, Justices of Appeal, Justice Brassington Reynolds and Justice Nareshwar Hananan, and other puny judges, Honorable Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Attorney General, Commissioners of Title, Chief Magistrate and Magistrates, Ms. Shalimar Ali Haq, Senior Counsel, Director of Public Prosecution, Mr. Harry Narayan Ramkaran, Senior Counsel, Mr. Robin Stobie, Senior Counsel, and other Senior Counsel, Registrar and Deputy Registrar of the Supreme Court, Mr. Taney Hoosty, President of the Bar Association of Guyana and members of the Bar Association, President of the Guyana Association of Women Lawyers, and members of the GAWL, newly appointed Senior Counsel, members of the Utter Bar, family, friends, and well-wishers of the newly appointed Senior Counsel, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. Today, we continue in our celebratory mode, in that having celebrated the conferment of silk on Mr. Merceline Bakker, Senior Counsel in Berbice last week, we are privileged to do so again as we mark the signal achievement of 5 eminent attorneys at law in our country. The appointment of Mr. Stanley Alfred Moore, Ms. Jamela Aisha Ali, Mr. Timothy Monroe Jonas, Mr. Roysdale Alton Forde, and Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall as Senior Counsel. Again, we have a blended sitting with attendance in person and via video link and live stream. It is meet and right that we honor those who are deserving of recognition, according them the privilege of sitting within the bar of the court. This is to say, they are considered members of the inner bar, with other counsel being designated as members of the utter or outer bar. Senior counsel are accorded certain privileges, such as being given precedence in having their matters called and dealt with. Since the members wear silk gowns of a particular design in Guyana, similar to a judge's civil gown, the award of senior counsel is informally known as taking silk, and these counsel are sometimes referred to as silks. All told, we have represented in our new silks a total of 150 years experience. I commend the December 14, 2020 decision of the Honorable Justice Nareshwar Hananan in Jonas and the Attorney General and others in fixed date application number 627 of 2020, in which His Honor recounts the history and more recent appointment processes for senior counsel, as well as the court's role in the appointment process and recognition of senior counsel. This morning, this court recognizes the newly appointed senior counsel. Many lawyers aspire to be accorded this honor. It is not to be taken lightly and requires hard work, diligence, and a propensity for scholarship and leadership at the bar. As I always say, it is important that junior counsel appreciate the importance of these ceremonies so that they can aspire to earn such recognition. It is important that junior lawyers understand what I like to refer to as being the lawyer's lawyer, those who command the respect of the profession as diligent, astute scholars of the law, persons of integrity. Such lawyers understand the importance of research and the production of sound and erudite submissions to the court. They are exemplars of our noble profession. In this regard, lawyers must understand that they are under constant judicial scrutiny as to their conduct both in and out of court. The conferment of silk carries with it a number of responsibilities. These include standing up for the rule of law and what is right in the administration of justice. As I've noted on previous occasions, senior counsel in the past have written candidly about the positives and negatives of the administration of justice, lending the weight of their status as silks in making interventions for betterment of the system. Our new senior counsel have done so this morning in their remarks. I would like to assure Mr. Moore that your suggestions have already been implemented in relation to judicial research assistance and having a court reporting unit. Your suggestions emphasize the importance of these aspects of the administration of the court system. And I would like to thank all seniors this morning, the newly appointed seniors, for their remarks and suggestions. And where necessary, senior counsel have had to defend judicial officers who, as you know, do not have a voice in the public domain. This may be necessary more so now, given what has unfortunately become an unwholesome norm, personal attacks on judicial officers because of their decisions. Be and continue to be advocates, not only in court, but in the public domain, as we seek to improve the administration of justice and the court system as a whole. There's always a symbiotic relationship between the bench and the bar, with the responsibility of the bar to ably assist the bench in dispensing justice. And in this regard, there's a particular duty expected of senior counsel to be officers of the court, to assist the bench in ensuring that justice is dispensed. It is also the duty of senior counsel to mentor junior counsel, more especially the juniors. Our newly admitted senior counsel have spoken of the mentorship that they have received. The biographies of the 5 silks we honor today have been ably presented by Mr. Ramkaran, senior counsel, and Mr. Stobie, senior counsel. They speak to their qualifications, which clearly demonstrate that this honor is richly deserved. When I came to practice some 30 years ago, the name Stanley Moore of the chambers of McKay and Moore was well known. Admitted to the bar 50 years ago, his is a distinguished career in private practice, in the public service, as well as a lecturer and as a jurist, serving not only here in Guyana and in the Caribbean, but internationally in Botswana and Swaziland. His return to Guyana permits him once again to directly contribute to the jurisprudence of our country. Ms. Jamela Ali was a year ahead of me at law school, having graduated in 1989. In the same year, she was admitted to the bar. I remember her as one who did not allow anyone to make negative comments about Guyanese students or Guyana. She's a very able practitioner who has shown leadership in championing mediation as a means of alternative dispute resolution. She has worked with the bench in promoting this mechanism to resolve cases in the court system. I would hope that her elevation will bring further recognition to this aspect of the administration of justice. Mr. Timothy Jonas, admitted to the bar in 1996 and now senior partner of the law firm De Carey's, Fitzpatrick and Curran, brings to the senior bar a high level of scholarship. Having been mentored, as we heard, by the late Mr. Miles Fitzpatrick, senior counsel, I know that he has and will continue this tradition of mentoring junior counsel. Mr. Jonas's capacity for research and his advocacy skills are well known. He's extremely thorough and meticulous and can be relied on to be of immeasurable assistance to the court. It isn't often that one has the privilege of welcoming a former student to the inner bar. This I have in Mr. Roysdale Forde, who was admitted to practice in 1997, and who has distinguished himself by his capacity to conduct research and his advocacy in the presentation of his cases. He too is very thorough, even if a bit lengthy in his submissions. And like Mr. Jonas, he provides great assistance to the court. Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall, admitted to the bar in 1998, can truly be said to have made a mark on the legal profession of Guyana, not because he's now twice appointed as Attorney General, but because of his capacity to bring interesting public law cases to the court. He too is well researched and extremely helpful to the court. He's an extremely good advocate and ably represents his clients, whether in private practice or on behalf of the state. Mr. Nandlall has also assisted junior counsel, mentoring a number of them through his chambers. The curriculum vitae of these senior counsel highlight their varied contributions to the law and the society at large. They represent expertise in criminal law, civil, private law, and public law. Their learning in the law, which now allows them to be referred to as learned senior, speaks to the necessity for senior counsel to be leaders in our profession and in our communities. As former President of the United States, John F. Kennedy is quoted as saying, "Leadership and learning are indispensable to each other." This year, we lost erudite senior counsel and former Chancellor of the Judiciary, Professor Keith Messiah. Life is about rejuvenation and continuity, and thus the elevation of these, our newest seniors, will so ensure, while enhancing the membership of the inner bar. I'm confident that the annals of history will record your respective contributions as senior counsel to the continued development of not only the jurisprudence of Guyana, but the uplift of the profession as a whole. Heartfelt congratulations to you, Mr. Stanley Alfred Moore, Senior Counsel, Ms. Jamela Aisha Ali, Senior Counsel, Mr. Timothy Monroe Jonas, Senior Counsel, Mr. Roysdale Alton Forde, Senior Counsel, and Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Senior Counsel, and to your families and well-wishers. The Judiciary formally welcomes your appointment as Senior Counsel. May God grant you continued wisdom and success. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chief Justice. Honorable Chancellor, may I invite you to make your remarks.
Honorable Chief Justice, Honorable Attorney General, Sir Dennis Byron, former President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Justices of Appeal Don Gregory and Rishi Prasad, Justice Brassington Reynolds, Justice Nareshwar Hananan, Judges of the High Court, Madam Director of Public Prosecution, Commissioners of Title, Chief Magistrate and Magistrates, former judges of the Supreme Court joining us remotely, in particular Justice Prem Prasad, Registrar of the Supreme Court, Deputy Registrar, Mr. Ralph Ramkaran, Senior Counsel, Mr. Robin Stobie, Senior Counsel, Mr. Tini Husti and members of the Bar Associations, members of the Inner Bar, members of the Outer Bar, newly minted Senior Counsel, relatives of Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Mr. Stanley Alfred Moore, Mr. Roysdale Alton Forde, Mr. Timothy Monroe Jonas, and Ms. Jamela Aisha Ali. And distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's an honor and a privilege for me to preside on this special sitting of the full court of the Supreme Court of Judicature to admit 5 attorneys to the inner bar. Just a few days ago, we had this privilege of sitting in the same capacity in the county of Berbice to admit Mr. Mercelin Bacchus as senior counsel. The title senior counsel, or Queen's Counsel as in some jurisdiction it is known, is an important one in the legal profession. It is an office conferred by the head of state, His Excellency the President of Guyana, after consultation with the judiciary. This conference allows for recommendations to be made by the judiciary to the head of state. It is recognized by the courts, by fellow attorneys, by litigants, and the public at large. It is a badge of honor that comes with hard work, distinction at the bar, experience, analytical skills, legal acumen, and other forensic skills. In recognition of such industry excellence and experience, the status of senior counsel is conferred on deserving attorneys. As a senior counsel, an attorney is publicly recognized, even internationally recognized, and allowed certain privileges. For instance, you're allowed to wear the distinctive silk gowns, hence the name silk or receiving silk. You have the right of free audience and precedence in court and at the bar. Hence, you're allowed a special seat in the courtroom before other attorneys, and your matters are called before other attorneys' matters. It is said that for everyone to whom much is given, from him much will be required. And this is found in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12 and verse 48. And for you, senior, today, we expect you to continue on the path of excellence. We expect much of you, and we expect that you in turn will give much to young counsel. We expect that you will train and guide young lawyers so that the legal profession will be filled with brilliant and learned young attorneys and a bar that is richer because of your contribution. Today, as we honor Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Mr. Stanley Alfred Moore, Mr. Roysdale Alton Forde, and Ms. Jamela Ali, we expect that because of your contribution, the jurisprudence of Guyana will be richer. We expect that the Bar Association in itself will be richer. We expect, too, that the legal system as a whole in Guyana will be better because of your contribution. Eminent men and ladies, set apart by your dress, by the gown you wear, and by the post-nominal of SC, you are distinguished from the rest of counsel in the outer bar. The designation of silk is a public recognition of your skills and your qualities. And of course, you have the right by that means to earn higher fees. Your qualities, which I would just like to highlight for young counsel coming up, listening, and for them to emulate you in these qualities and having these qualities, being learned in the law, providing guidance to the clients and to the courts even. Diligence, capacity and willingness to devote yourself to tasks. Experience in conducting cases at all levels, as Mr. Jonas said, being a jack of all trades. Considerable practice in the various fields of law. Leadership and guidance. Integrity, worthy of the confidence and trust of the bench and the bar. As Ms. Ali mentioned rightly, integrity is important. Shakespeare said, "He who steals my purse steals trash. 'Tis something, 'tis nothing. It was mine, it was now his. But he who robs me of my good name filches from me that which enriches him not, but makes me poor indeed. So being senior counsel, integrity counts a whole lot. And of course, ethical conduct and personal standards of a high nature. I know that you've all undertaken a long and arduous journey to get to where you are today. As Chief Justice mentioned, collectively 150 years. But it has been a rewarding journey, I dare say. And in this journey, let us not forget the contributions of your families, your relatives, your colleagues, and your friends who have helped along the way. Their support is invaluable. The vast array of cases and the wide-ranging subject matters in which you have appeared and contributed to development of the jurisprudence of Guyana will be briefly mentioned. Areas of public law, constitutional and admin law, criminal law, private law, and land law, and an extensive record of cases will, coming from all of you, cases which have dotted, I dare say, the West Indian law reports, the Commonwealth law reports, and our local Guyana law reports. I start first with the contribution of Mr. Mohabir Anil Nandlall, the Attorney General, in cases which we refer to as locus classicus, or in the plural loci classici. Cases in criminal law, constitutional and admin law, public law, and even in land law. The case of Donovan Caesar and the state. In 1999, I recall appearing in the Court of Appeal against the learned Attorney General, who was then counsel in private practice, appearing before Chancellor Kennard and dealing with matters of constitutional importance on the right to counsel. The case of Hardat Ketwaru and the state again, Grant Griffith, which you heard Mr. Stobie mention as a groundbreaking case, being the first of its from this jurisdiction to the Caribbean Court of Justice. Another landmark decision was that in land law in Ramdas and Jairam. There's also Ray Barakat's application dealing with rules governing appeals to the full court and to the Court of Appeal. Prasad and Suchan and another, Ramkishun and Funky Fong, Singh and Attorney General and Ramlo Chan, Rhodesia Beverages and Juices and another against the state of Guyana, Attorney General of Guyana and Ramlal, Kwong and another and Yoki, Guyana Stores and Attorney General, Mustafa and Attorney General, and Ram and Attorney General and others. These are all important cases for which the learned senior has made his contribution, and I dare say will continue to make his contribution to the development of our jurisprudence. I come now to the lone lady in today's admission, Ms. Jamela Aisha Ali. The cases on prerogative writs and cases on mining and judicial review, cases referred to earlier on by senior, which and Ms. Ali would have appeared in, include Attorney General and Jardim. She was led by senior counsel, Mr. McKay. The case of Ramdiol and Randiol, which went all the way to the Caribbean Court of Justice. Guyana Geology and Mines and Wayne Vera, dealing with prospecting license and medium-scale permit and judicial review. Duki and Guy Suko on personal injuries. GPL and Orlando Wong, and she appeared against Mr. Jonas in that case. Medical Council of Guyana and Suknandan on judicial review. Ram Sahoy and Lynn Mine on pension. And Cecil Abrams and the Attorney General of Guyana dealing with committal proceedings, and the appellants were committed to stand trial where a prima facie case has not been made out against them, resulting in their loss of liberty and the denial of the protection granted under the Constitution, and the court declaring their committal a nullity. Mr. Roysdale Forde would have appeared in so many other cases too. The Attorney General and Caterpillar Americas in 2000, which is reported in 62 West Indian Report, led by Senior Counsel Mr. Rex McKay, dealing with compulsory acquisition and the introduction of the concept of eminent domain into our jurisprudence. Chase and Chase, Garraway and Williams on estoppel, res judicata, and adverse possession. Attorney General and Ram and those other cases dealing with elections petitions. AG and Richardson on the question of the referendum on Act number 17 of 2010, or whether there should have been a referendum for the amendment to the Constitution. Public Service Commission and Jabbar. And of course, he would have appeared in Clico Life and General Insurance, South American Limited, rewinding up proceedings, whether the court should continue in operations under judicial management. And in that case, the late Chief Justice Chang ordered that the winding up be done. In the criminal field, Mr. Forde would have appeared in Mulai and Mulai, which is reported in 57 West Indian Report, a case dealing with communication with the jury and a judge not conducting an inquiry and a challenge to the conviction on the question of the real danger test. And the case of Johnson and Edwards against the state, 1999, 60 West Indian Report 278, coming up against yours truly, then as Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions. I turn now to the contribution of Mr. Timothy Jonas. So many cases dealing with public law, leave to appeal. I start with the case of Christopher Prasad against Tulsi Prasad, a matter under the Companies Act. Deonarine Singh, an Attorney General, and NISIL, dealing with compulsory acquisition and compensation for violation of constitutional right to protection of property. Rodriguez and Architects Limited and against the New Building Society Limited. A case in 93 West Indian Report at page 339, dealing with stay of execution of money judgment and the factors to be considered in the exercise of judicial discretion in that regard. AG and Dipcon Engineering, GNCB and RN Prasad, James Ramsahoy and Linmine, Gayadin and others against the Republic Bank. DPL and Wong on judicial review. Ross and Sinclair, another important matter that went to the Caribbean Court of Justice dealing with the Condominium Act, private law and public law remedies, and reinforcement of the principle that no equitable interest in immovable property exists in our laws. And of course, Ambrose and Guyana Stores and personal injuries, an application by Claude Jardim. Mr. Stanley Moore, you would have appeared in many landmark cases in the criminal field, in particular the case of Green and Alin against the state, the case that is stated or quoted often by many prosecutors or state counsel, appearing in any case dealing with identification in court. The case also of Frank Martin and the state, dealing with res gestae hearsay rule and the exceptions to hearsay. Frank David and the state, another question dealing with identification on the question of a one-man ID parade, which was deprecated and for which the Court of Appeal allowed the appeal. Another landmark decision is that of the case of the state against Gobin and Griffith, dealing with confession statement, their admissibility, and also the question of stare decisis, whether the Court of Appeal can overrule its previous decisions. Another case in ID is the case of Khan against the state, which dealt with the absence of ID parade, the case of State against Larry Layton, dealing with bias and disqualification of a judge, and the preliminary inquiry not being held as directed by the Director of Public Prosecutions, and the PI being deemed to be illegal by the court. Mr. Moore has the signal honor as part of being an Attorney General to sit in various courts within the Commonwealth and beyond. He would have sat in the Court of Appeal of Botswana and in the Supreme Court of Swaziland. He's been Attorney General of Montserrat and Acting Governor of Montserrat. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a moment that all the newly admitted senior would have been dreaming of. This is the moment that they've been waiting for. This is the moment, this is the day. I urge you, therefore, having achieved this dream, to remember the words of Desiderata, go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others. Even the dull and the ignorant, they too have their story. Be humble, even as you strive to be happy, even as you would have achieved a great conferment today. Your collective contribution to the bar must not stop here. Do not for one moment entertain that feeling that you have arrived. Do not plateau, to use the word of Mr. Forde. Continue to work hard and to be an exemplar to young counsel. Remember, you are a part of an important institution, and you have to play a crucial role in this institution. So do not stop by the woods on a snowy evening, despite the loveliness of the view. Remember the words of Robert Frost. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Your task ahead is an ongoing commitment with obligations and considerable distance yet to be traveled in this legal field before you can rest. You are all young, save one whom we can consider young at heart. And so I urge you to be exemplary, inspiring, and impressive men and women of silk, especially to the younger ones. On behalf of the judges, the magistrates, and all judicial officers, I thank you for your contribution thus far to the legal profession and to the jurisprudence of Guyana. We salute you. I am pleased to be associated and to adopt the sentiments expressed by Mr. Robin Stovey, Senior Counsel, by Mr. Ralph Ramkaran, Senior Counsel, and by Mr. Tini, who's the President of the Bar Association, on your petition for admission to the Inner Bar. Heartiest congratulations and welcome to the Inner Bar. Please continue on the same trajectory which has brought you great success and the attainment of SIG. May God continue to richly bless you all. I thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chancellor. This brings us to the end of this morning's proceedings.
Court rise.